There is a question I have watched people ask their entire lives without realizing they are asking it. When will things become easier? When will the circumstances finally arrange themselves into something manageable, something that does not require quite so much before I have even begun? They ask it quietly in the hour before sleep, when the day's weight is still sitting on their chest. They ask it in the middle of grief, in the middle of the long, grinding stretches of life that are harder than any single catastrophe, because those stretches have no drama to dignify them and no clear ending to move toward. The answer I have arrived at, after everything I have written and everything I have lived, is the one they least want to hear. It will not get easier. The difficulty is not a temporary condition preceding the real life waiting for you on the other side. The difficulty is the life, and the only question that matters is not when it will relent, but what you are becoming while you endure it. I wrote in Crime and Punishment that suffering is the sole origin of consciousness. I want to be precise about what I meant, because it is easy to read that as a romantic statement about the nobility of pain, and that is not what I meant at all. Consciousness, genuine self-knowledge, real awareness of what you are and what the world is, does not arrive through comfort. Comfort preserves you exactly as you are. It asks nothing of you and requires no confrontation with the limits of what you can bear. The man who has never been tested does not know himself. What he mistakes for self-knowledge is merely a catalogue of his preferences, his habits, and the flattering story he has built about who he would be if things ever became genuinely difficult. Suffering breaks that story open. It does not ask permission. It arrives and strips away, with complete indifference to your preferences, every assumption you have built your identity upon. What it leaves behind, if you do not flee from it, is something more real and more durable than anything the comfortable life could have produced. Raskolnikov is the clearest portrait I ever drew of a man who believed he could think his way out of this. He was brilliant, cold, and burning with the conviction that superior intelligence exempts a person from the ordinary conditions of human existence. His theory was this: certain men are extraordinary. The great man acts without the hesitation that constrains lesser people, and the costs that apply to ordinary humanity simply do not apply to him. He identified an obstacle, performed his calculation, and removed it. Then the arithmetic stopped working. Not because the law found him, but because something beneath his intellect, something operating according to laws no philosophical system had mapped, began to speak. He could not sleep. He could not eat. He walked the streets of Petersburg and felt the city itself indicting him. He had believed that strength was the freedom to act without consequence. What he discovered is that this is not strength at all. It is a sophisticated form of evasion, the attempt to become something other than human, in order to avoid the costs that being human always eventually presents. And the costs came anyway. They always come. The question is only whether you meet them having grown toward them or having spent your energy running from them. Then there is Sonia, who is the counter-argument the novel makes to everything Raskolnikov believed. She does not argue. She simply exists in full view, doing what she does. She has been dealt a hand that would justify despair in anyone. Poverty so complete it has pushed her into a life she did not choose, a family depending on her in ways no person should bear, a social position so degraded that the respectable world will not look at her directly. And yet she does not break. Not because she is naive about her circumstances, she sees them with absolute clarity, but because she has found, inside the suffering rather than despite it, something Raskolnikov, with all his intelligence, has not yet touched. She understands that endurance is not passive. To remain present to your own life, to continue loving what is in front of you, to refuse the retreat into bitterness or the cold numbness of someone who has decided the world is not worth their full engagement. This is not weakness disguised as acceptance. This is the hardest form of strength there is. When Raskolnikov finally confesses, it is not defeat. It is the first genuine act of strength in the novel. because it is the first moment he stops trying to be something other than what he is. The epilogue shows him in the labor camp in Siberia, not yet remade. I am too honest to offer quick redemption. But Sonia is there beside him, and he is beginning the slow, unglamorous work of becoming a person who can bear his own existence, not by escaping the difficulty, by going through it. Father Zosima says in The Brothers Karamazov that active love is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams. He says this to a woman who comes to him full of beautiful intentions, describing how she would sacrifice everything, nurse the sick, give herself entirely to the service of suffering humanity. Her feeling is genuine, but it has never been tested by the actual person in front of her who is ungrateful or difficult, or whose need does not resolve into a satisfying conclusion no matter how much she gives. Zosima is not dismissing her. He is warning her. What she is describing, the clean, emotionally rewarding love of the imagination, is not what the life she is proposing will actually require. What it will require is labor and fortitude, the willingness to show up again after you have been exhausted and underappreciated and have seen no visible result from your effort. The capacity to remain present to difficulty without requiring it to stop before you can begin. This is precisely what I mean when I say stop waiting for life to get easier. Not as advice about managing your expectations, but as a description of what the alternative actually costs you. The man who waits for easier circumstances before living fully is not resting, he is contracting. Every year spent waiting for conditions to improve is a year in which the habit of deferral becomes more deeply written into him, in which the capacity for full engagement with life atrophies from disuse, in which the distance between the person and his own existence grows wider and more impossible to cross. The underground man is the end point of this. He did not begin underground. He arrived there through a series of small retreats, each one individually reasonable, each one another step away from the direct and costly engagement with life that genuine living always requires. By the time we meet him, he has the most developed critical intelligence in any room he enters and cannot move. He has understood everything and done nothing. His acuity has become his cage. Dmitri Karamazov stands at the opposite end of this. He is not wise and not careful. He makes catastrophic mistakes, some of which cannot be undone. But there is something alive in him that Ivan's brilliant, cold architecture does not contain. Even his humiliation and wrongful conviction cannot extinguish his willingness to remain fully present to his own experience without filtering it through what he wishes it were. His passion and his capacity for suffering are not separate qualities. They are the same quality expressed differently. The man who can feel things fully enough to be destroyed by them is also the man who can be transformed by them. The man who has sealed himself against destruction has, in the same gesture, sealed himself against transformation. I am a realist in my own way. I believe in the regeneration of man through suffering, not in the romanticism of pain, not in the idea that hardship is its own reward, but in something precise and verifiable. The human character does not deepen without resistance. Genuine strength is not the absence of difficulty, but the accumulation of what difficulty has demanded of you and what you gave in response. The person you are capable of becoming is not accessible through any route that bypasses the life you actually have. The mystery of human existence lies not in staying alive, but in finding something to live for that is large enough to justify the full weight of what being alive costs. That meaning is never found by waiting for circumstances to become favorable. It is found inside the unfavorable ones by the person who has stopped asking when the difficulty will end and started asking what the difficulty is trying to make of them. You will not become stronger by waiting for life to become easier. Life will not become easier. It will change its shape, as it always does, but it will not relent. Every philosophy built on the assumption that it will is a philosophy that will eventually shatter against the reality that it won't. What you can do, the only thing a person can actually do with the irreducible difficulty of being alive, is decide, with whatever honesty you can manage, that the life in front of you is the life you are going to live fully. That the suffering in front of you is the suffering you are going to move through rather than wait out. And that the person you are going to become is not the person who was spared difficulty, but the person who was not spared and went in anyway.